I just want to re-emphasize one more time that this is definitely PG-13. I have a 10-year-old son, and he has not yet heard me, nor will he for a few more years. I share some things in here that I don't think that children under 13 should really hear. There is a junior church outside, but if you choose not to utilize that, I have cleared my conscience. I've warned you. As was today, I don't know. Did you share this time? I was a pastor's son growing up. Sometimes when there's multiple services, I forget what we've said. But I was a pastor's son growing up, and my father pastored in some Pentecostal churches that were very legalistic. What I mean by that is I'm wearing swimming attire right now. This is the kind of thing that guys would swim in. The girls would swim at a separate time in their dresses. There were no TVs in the house. Some considered two-tone cars to be showing off, so that was sinful. No movies. You can't go to your friends' houses because they might let you do something we don't want you to do. God was a list of rules and things I couldn't do. He was the reason I couldn't have any fun in life. This is how I perceived God. I don't blame my parents for that. My parents were just doing the best that they could. But I'm just telling you what happened as a result of that. I would start getting bitter inside, especially when my parents would share openly in their discussions amongst themselves what was happening in the lives of some of the people in the church. I'd see these people on Sundays, and they were the saints. You know, the saints go marching in, and something else goes marching out for the rest of the week. You know, I'd hear about that. And I didn't want any part of that, especially as a teenager. I started really hating the church and all it stood for. And I started confusing God with the people that claimed to represent Him, which is something that so many of us do. That's in one of the steps that Pastor just shared, where we blame others. I was blaming others. I was confusing God and the people who claim to represent Him. Those are broken people, and God's the perfect God. But for so long, I confused them. I let this anger, bitterness well up inside of me. My senior year of high school, I moved out of my father's house and ended in with my aunt, because the school in the small town he pastored didn't have calculus. And yeah, I was a geek. I was one of those bookworms that academically inclined. And I was pursuing a scholarship, so I moved in so I could take this calculus class with my aunt's city. And that year I met a girl named Wendy. And Wendy was a girl who had been raised in an Assembly of God church by parents who showed her a God who was a friend, a God who loved her, might have asked things of her, but did so for a reason. A God with whom she had a relationship. And so for her sake, I tried. I tried to be a Christian man. We dated for 4 years before we married, and she was still a virgin on our wedding night, and that's not because I didn't try to change it. I definitely tried, and she'd be like, Donny, you're a pastor's son. You should know better. Oh well, try again next time. And she lived it. I was the only guy she'd ever kissed. I was the only guy she'd ever been with. And I went to church for her. Notice I said for her. I went to church for her. I went to men's Bible studies. I went to men's breakfast. I prayed at like 6 in the morning. I don't know what I was thinking getting up that early to pray. You know, it was like, what the heck? But in the meantime, when a computer entered my house, I started looking at porn on the internet. I thought it was great. I'd become the hypocrite that I'd always hated growing up, is basically what it breaks down to. And I would look at these things and I'd say, man, I could probably make money doing this. And so it wasn't long before I was doing just that. I was producing it part-time behind my wife's back. I started a company. I call it Pauling Technology Consulting. And my wife didn't ask very many questions because she had no interest in computers and networks and things like this. So I'm keeping it restrained and I'm producing, and it goes on for 3 years. 2 years into it, I had always promised myself I'd be professional, but 2 years into it, I slept with one of the models and hated myself for that and said if I ever do that again, I'm coming clean. And a year later, it happens again, so I came clean. I called her up and I says, right now you think I'm at a convention in Phoenix. That's true, but it's not for pinpoint golf, as I told you. And I told her what I was doing. And that was the end of our marriage. She did give me a chance. I mean, I had to leave the house, of course, as soon as I got back. Ladies, imagine how you'd feel. I mean, this is the only person you've ever kissed. You've saved yourself and trusted God because this is the kind of marriage that you're supposed to have, this pure relationship, and you find out that it's not. You find out that this husband that's been laying beside you every night is not who you thought he was. You've known he's had some issues, but you just think time and God are going to take care of those. And then you find this out. Imagine how that would rip your heart out. And put into that scenario the fact that you have a 1-year-old little boy. And I had a chance at that point to repent and go back, and I chose not to. I let that anger and bitterness inside just kind of consume me and take over. And I chose to pursue it. And I've quickly had another girlfriend who was raised in what I call porn generation. She was 8 years younger than me. She was 19. I was 27 at the time. And what I mean by porn generation is I mean your kids. You know, graduated year 2000 and onward, where they've been raised in a household that they watch pornography with their parents in the living room. And if you don't know what I'm talking about those shows that are on network TV that we don't call porn because they have clothes on, but anybody knows what's really going on there. And as kids grow up in an environment like that, they start thinking that this must be what sex is, this must be okay. It makes it very easy for a predator like me to recruit them. It made it amazingly easy to recruit. Because after all, Britney Spears can go out without her underwear and everybody makes a big deal about it. Paris Hilton can make a video and she becomes more famous because of it. Because this is the society that we live in that glamorizes it even in the church. What are you watching when you're sitting beside your kids? What is that message telling them without words? This is okay, Mom and Dad approve. So Belinda, the new girlfriend, was totally fine with what I did. That first month, I didn't have to hide it anymore. I made $50,350. And I was hooked. I wasn't going back now. I mean, not only do I have money and freedom of my own time, we'd live this lifestyle where we'd work the first half of the month, make a lot of money, spend it the second half of the month, never saving because porn's not going away, saving something we'll do later. We lived this lifestyle, and it was open and free, and I loved to throw it back in the faces of people that I knew from the past, especially from my father's churches. We'd have that catch-up conversation. It went like this. It's that conversation that you have when you haven't seen anyone for a while and you ask what they're doing, and they'd say, "Hey, Donny, what are you doing?" And I'd say, "I'm a porn producer." And they'd kind of snicker, like, "Yeah, right." And I said, "No, seriously, I am." And then you see the change in their face, and you could tell that they're really wanting to let you have it. I mean, they've known me since I'm a little kid, so they feel like they can let me have it. So you see that build up inside like they're just about to just let go on you. And I would stop that process and I'd say, "Wait a second, let me ask you a question. Have you ever consumed pornography?" Don't answer, I don't want to hear you lie. But if you have, you and me are in this together because the law of supply and demand says if I didn't have an audience to consume what I'm producing, I couldn't be doing it. So what was it that you were going to say to me? And it would kind of change the tone of our conversation, but it's true. I did that out of a wrong spirit at the time. But I'm telling you today, Christians, you are the biggest consumers of pornography that exist. When I owned porn sites, I had 12 million visitors a month that came to my sites. Some of us would buy Christian email lists because Christians would click through at a higher percentage than any other group. There's a biblical reason for this. The Bible says that what you keep in secret becomes a bigger issue. You've got to shed light on a problem. And so many churches don't talk about this. The newspaper writes about it because it's such an uncommon thing. But that's wrong. We're not shedding light on this subject. And because of that, it's tearing the church up. It's tearing your families up. See, I get to travel now and speak about what God has done in my life. And I am blatantly sharing the things I've done. And if you feel like hating me, that's okay with me. But just keep in mind what I said, that we're all part of the cycle. Even if we get our porn from free sites. Those sites make more money than some of the pay sites. I used to advertise on one, $2,000 a day for every text link. It doesn't matter. There's no justification for being involved in that supply and demand cycle. It's absolutely an issue that all of us either have consumed or know someone who does. Ladies are not immune because the college age and up to about 75% when they can remain anonymous of ladies say that they've looked at it. 30% of the total consumers of pornography are women. And it's the fastest growing addiction among senior citizens. Imagine that one. So nobody here today is immune. I want to share some things for you and just kind of let you see what a lie it is. As I travel, though, and speak now, there's certain things that happen. I have men who come up and they'll tell me their struggles and how it's affected their life. And I know how to respond. I'm one of those guys. I had my struggles too. And I know how to respond to girls who have come up and said, I was involved in the sex industry, and this is how it ruined me. Because I've destroyed lots of lives of those same girls. What I don't know how to handle is when a woman comes up crying and telling me things like this one email I received where she says, my husband's addiction is stripping away all that I am. And another part of it says, it seems like wives are a lost casualty in this war. And I don't know how to handle that. In the meantime, since I've been out of the business, my son's mother and I, Wendy, have become great friends. She actually works for me now. I have a business where I market auto dealer websites. And she works for me, and we've become like best friends. So when I received this email with those 2 lines I read, I forwarded it on to her because I wanted her input. I wanted her to tell me what can I say to this woman? How can I help? And the response is not what I expected, and it's not what God would have her to say. And she even says it in the letter. But it's very powerful, and I want to use it to make a point, so I'm going to read it to you. Donny, you don't understand. It hurts so much just to read this letter. And all I feel like I could give her is to say, run, run, run. Run away, far away. It's adultery in the most painful form. It's ongoing because it's not a, quote, real affair. So it's like trying to work through a marriage one-sided. While he's having this continual affair, you're trying to work through it. How is that fair? Tell me, how is that okay? All in capitals. How can I try to give women tools to work through it? How can I tell them to try to rebuild something with someone who is not doing their part? It is so one-sided. And all I would have to say to these women is to tell them to leave. And that isn't right. God needs to deal with each situation on an individual basis, and they need to hear from Him what they're supposed to do. But how can their marriage survive? To me, it can't. If he doesn't quit, it will tear them apart. How come this should be her burden is what I wonder. The very thing he's stabbing her heart with and tearing their family apart with and their children or whomever is the very thing she's supposed to help him through? As Christians, is that what we're supposed to do? Stand by his side and be a faithful warrior on his behalf? When he is so selfish he would sacrifice his wife and children for photographs and fantasy? I truly don't even know. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Her statement where she says, my husband's addiction is stripping away all that I am, and where she says, it seems like wives are a lost casualty in this war, they kill me because I know. For me, divorcing you and getting out of all of it was freedom. I didn't have to continue being torn apart. I could get strong and rebuild my life. When you're in it, your heart is ripped to shreds over and over and over again. I don't know how to counsel someone who's going through that. I'm angry and I have no level of understanding for this level of selfishness. Who knows? Maybe if wives left their husbands, men would see reality. The reality of the fact is that it is an affair, and their wives shouldn't have to put up with it, just like they wouldn't have to put up if there was physical abuse. How is this different? Emotional wounds hurt more than physical ones. Let him have his porn because that's obviously what he wants, and he can't have both. I just don't have the answers at this point. Read in the Old Testament when Israel was unfaithful to God and see if you get any insight. Wendy. That's 8 years after I did what I did to her. You could still see the raw emotion because guess what, men? We are deceiving ourselves if we say pornography is not an affair. It is an affair. God created sex to be between you and one person. There's a reason for that. It's not because He's wanting to take your fun away. It's not because He wants a reason to send us to hell. He just knows how we're wired. And as Pastor said earlier, it would be so much better if we just trust Him. And we don't have to have the people in our head from our past. And we don't have to wonder if people in her head were better than us. God has a reason for asking us to do everything. But when I was in the pornography industry, I was deceiving myself. I was raging and using that rage to justify what I was doing. And I started, when I'm on my little trips with Belinda, the new girlfriend, I would start to receive emails, letters, phone calls from girls whose lives are just coming apart at the seams because of what they've done for me, the work that they've done. And it's a myth if you think that people in porn are broken. They're not. They're your daughters. They're your sisters, sometimes your wives. And the reason that they go down this road is because our society says it's okay. And so they come into a house like mine where I live in this fancy place and I have these nice things. And I'm with these people who are famous that they've seen on TV. And they start painting themselves into this lifestyle. And then I take it away from them. Because the house is doing the selling. It's letting them see themselves in this lifestyle. And I say, this is not for you. Because I know, as a master manipulator, that what you tell a child in college, notice I said child, in college, what they can't have, it's exactly what they want. It works the same with most of us. We want to always cross boundaries. I'm supposed to stay behind this purple line and I want to walk out to the edge of the stage. It's just built into me. We always want to cross boundaries. And so I would use that. And I'd lead them down a path where we start off with photos. And we'd get them a little bit more and more deep into this world. We would lead them down this path a little bit at a time. And it wouldn't be long until a girl would be calling me on the telephone and she'd be crying and she'd be saying, Donny, is there any way we could remove this stuff? Because my dad, he came out of his office with his buddies. They were going to go have a beer and he gets to his car and it's covered with photos of me and he's so ashamed of me right now. He won't even talk to me. I've always been Daddy's little girl. Can we do anything? And I can't. And people ask me at these events, do you still find porn attractive? Do you still feel tempted by it? And I ask in return, what is appealing about a girl curled up in the fetal position in a corner, sucking her thumb because her mind is so blown by what she's just done to herself on camera that she doesn't know how to deal with it? That's the reality of porn. You have to work really hard to get that fantasy on screen. You have to scream at the girl over and over again to get the scene right sometimes. You have to say, if you don't get this right this time, you're not getting paid. All those things that we find appealing are completely fake. Now, see, sometimes in Hollywood, that's okay. But the Bible tells us, you watch a movie, we all know it's fake. And some people say, well, isn't porn just like acting? No. In Corinthians, Paul tells the Corinthians, in his letter to them, that there's no sin that affects us like this. There's nothing that affects us like this. This is what God created to bond us together with that person for life. And so I am putting that bond together with so many different people. And you are putting that bond together with so many different people by consuming it with me, by helping to create that demand. And yes, sure, sometimes you're going to see a porn star on TV talking about the great life that she leads and how much she loves it. I know better. There was one on TV just not very long ago. She had just won some awards at the AVN ceremony that the industry has every year in Las Vegas, this awards convention. And she was talking about how great her life was. Well, I had just not too long before that had a Google alert sent to me. Anytime someone mentions my name on the internet, I get this alert from Google when they find it. And I went and read this article, and it was by this girl I recruited in Chico State University several years ago. And she is talking and saying that she got her start with me and talking about what a hypocrite I am for talking against the industry now. And I emailed her and I says, thank you for the article. If you ever need someone to talk to, here's my cell number. I just talked to her a few weeks ago. She told me something completely different than she said on camera. But if you think about it, it makes sense. If CNN was pointing a camera in your face and you kind of knew the angle of the story that they wanted, you're going to say great things too. My life is wonderful. They're not going to air you saying, yeah, my life kind of sucks right now. It's falling apart. Out of the 500 plus people that I've recruited into this business, I've never had one that's come back and said, thank you for getting me involved. I've had girl after girl after girl who has responded and sent me letters. I'll read one to you right now. This girl, all she'd ever done was photos. She didn't go very far down the path. She did photos solo, just all by herself, She was naked. And she writes this to me. Hey, Donny, I have a huge problem. I'm getting married in a month, and my fiancé found my pictures on the internet. He is beside himself. He is hurt and shocked. And being that we're supposed to tie the knot in less than a month, I'm frickin' suicidal. Frickin' sick over this. Throwing up, cannot sleep at all. I never thought in a million years that would ever happen. How long do those pictures circulate? I am seriously pissed. I know I did those pics, and yes, it was my fault, but I want to get them off the internet. Is there any way possible to do that ASAP? I will pay you the money back, whatever it takes. This will and is ruining my life. I am fearful that his friends will see and torture him about it, or the people I work with in the military who are all men. I am absolutely sick over this. I can't eat or sleep, and I honestly don't know what to do. I swear to you, I never thought this would happen. I mean, there are a million girls on the frickin' internet. Why me? And because you're supposed to be a changed man into God and everything, please, I need to know that you understand my situation and find it in your heart to help me. This is destroying me. I know I'm 100% responsible for taking the pictures. It's my fault, but it was a long time ago, and I was single, and I needed the money. But isn't there anything you can do to please help me now? This was like 2 or 3 years ago. Why are my pics still on the damned internet? My military career and soon-to-be marriage, if he still will, is writing on this. Don't they expire after a certain time? Then you just put new ones up, or you sell new ones to companies to flush out old girls? I think you can read the desperation in this email. I'm completely desperate again at this point, and I need your help. Can you please help me? Please, I need everything removed. What can we do? I'll pay you money. Anything, please. Say you can help me, please. And there's nothing I can do for her, because that's not unique. These companies aren't going to remove that content. There'd be nothing left to look at. Long after the $500 is spent, when she's a grandmother, they're still going to be around somewhere. Eternal consequences. They'll be around after she's dead. It's not going anywhere. We all contribute to this sort of thing when we partake in porn. Aren't you glad you came to church today? Feeling good out there? There is light at the end of the tunnel. It's not all this dark. Because God, He says that He can use all things for good. He says there's nothing that He can't use for good. So there was a time when Satan was sitting beside him, kind of elbowing him and saying, you know, look what Donny's doing. Look how he's destroying lives. This is so funny. He was raised a pastor's son. And now there's a time when God has done a very big work that I'm going to share with you now, the second part of the story. And God's saying, now you were saying? What was that? I didn't get that. Because I've had the chance now to speak in front of more than 4 million people, even at secular universities, at churches all over, been on Nightline ABC, talking about God and grace and forgiveness, because they want to know why a guy would walk away from something that's supposed to be so fabulous. And I'm about to share that with you. What happened is this. Every year, Las Vegas, Nevada, has a convention for the porn industry. And every year I would attend. There's conventions all over the country, but this is the one that you don't miss. This is the big one. And every year I would walk down those hallways past all the people holding their picket signs, telling me that I'm going to go burn in hell, how badly it was going to hurt when I got there. And I would do nothing much more than give them my one-finger salute as I passed through. And it would fuel my rage even further. If you have ever held a picket sign or ever thought about it, just put that thought right out of your head and don't do it. Because what are you thinking? How can a sinner tell another sinner what they can't do and it not be hypocritical? How about if instead we show Christ's love? That's what changed me. Here's what happened. I'm walking down the convention hallways, and I go inside, and I see this booth. The first year that I saw it, it was totally black background. There were white letters that said xxxchurch.com, the #1 Christian porn site. And I thought, that's awesome. Here's some people making fun of Christians. I love this. This is right down my alley. I want to go see what kind of porn they're filming in church. This is going to be cool. So I get over there, and there's a couple of youth pastors, and there's one of their wives in a Rex the Rabbit suit that they stole from the children's ministry, and I'm told that the children's ministry never wanted it back after that, after it had been to the porn show. But they were doing amazing things. They were telling people amazing things. Let me show you the scene from the next year. They had a booth that said Jesus loves porn stars, and they had a big stack of Bibles that didn't last very long. It didn't make it to the end of the show. Imagine how hard it is to get Jesus loves porn stars printed on a Bible by a Christian publisher. But that's what they were doing, and on the back it says, does Jesus really love porn stars? It says, absolutely. That might go against anything that you've heard about Jesus, but it's true. He loves porn stars as much as he loves pastors. Soccer moms, liars, thieves, and prostitutes were all the same to Jesus. We're just people who need God to save us from the mess that we're in and lead us to a better way. And they would do crazy things, like the next slide, where they're sitting there doing makeup for one of the girls who was walking around promoting the porn companies. Most of them wear a lot less clothes than this, which is why this is the one shown in church. But they're telling her that she's beautiful, that there is nothing she could ever do that would make God love her any differently. He loves her no matter what. If you need help, we're here. We think he's got more for you than this. They would do these sorts of crazy things, and it would get inside of my head. I would love these people when I'm at the show. I'd go home, start thinking about it, let that bitterness come back up, and I'd just rage against them. And I'd go to their porn site, their website, xxxchurch.com, and I would post links to my porn sites, because I knew not only are these Christian people visiting this site, but they're Christian people struggling with porn. This is a good business opportunity. Let's put a link on my site. I'm the only guy they ever had to ban from their website. And they said, you can come back. We just don't think that you need to be posting these links. We'd welcome to have you back. Over the course of 4 years, we had this relationship. Loved him, hated him, loved him, hated him. Started thinking, if I was a Christian, this is the kind of Christian I'd like to be, because no matter how much hate I'm giving them, they're responding in love. This is so different than what I was raised with. This is absolutely amazing to me. And as those walls of hatred started coming down, I could no longer justify what I was doing. I'd get those emails from models, and it would just hurt even more. From your daughters. And speaking of daughters, that's one thing that I want to put out there. People all the time are asking me, how do I deal with my lustful thoughts? How do I do that? I'll tell you what, I'll tell you what helps me a bit. Now, we're all different, and it takes a lot of practice. What helps me is thinking of my best friend, John. He's got a daughter that I've known since she was young. She's now a teenager. She's becoming a beautiful woman. There is no way in the world I would ever look at her inappropriately, say inappropriate things to her, and have lustful thoughts about my best friend's daughter. I love that little girl. I've known her all of her life. Out of respect for her and my best friend, there's no way I would ever do that. But guess what? Every woman is God's daughter. He is always standing there. He's got one for me. All the others are for somebody else. They're not mine. They're not mine to look at like that. Obviously everybody still has some struggles. I still do, once in a while. I immerse myself in His Word. I pray a lot. I think along these lines. I try to put practical solutions to it. It's kind of like this. If you're struggling with something, think of this. Don't let shame get you down. That's the topic this week. When you're a parent and you're having your children first learn to walk, they're walking along, they stumble and fall. They get back up, they stumble and fall. They get back up. Do you ever at any time say, you know what, this walking thing's not for you, why don't you just stay down? I don't think you have what it takes. No. You get down on your one knee like God does, and you help them back up again. Just like God does. And they fall and you help them up, and they fall and you help them up. God says, when you have done all that you can to stand, then stand. You get back up. There is nothing you could ever do that would make Him love you any less. I take a lot of encouragement from the writings of Paul. This one passage in particular, I'm going to read to you from the Message version because it's so clear in here. And this is Mr. Super Christian, who wrote half the New Testament. This is the guy that we were just hearing about earlier. His life was defined by what he did after Christ changed him. And he writes this, though. Even after that experience, he writes, In Romans chapter 7, I'm going to start at 15. He says, "What I don't understand about myself is that I decide one way, but then I act another, doing things I absolutely despise. So if I can't be trusted to figure out what is best for myself and then do it, it becomes obvious that God's command is necessary, but I need something more. For if I know the law, but still can't keep it, and if the power of sin within me keeps sabotaging my best intentions, it's obvious that I need help. I realize that I don't have what it takes. I can will it, but I can't do it. I decide to do good, but I don't really do it. I decide not to do bad, but then I do it anyway. My decisions, such as they are, don't result in actions. Something has gone wrong deep within me, and it gets the better of me every time. It happens so regularly that it's predictable. The moment I decide to do good, sin is there to trip me up. I truly delight in God's commands, but it's obvious that not all of me joins in that delight. Parts of me covertly rebel, and just when I least expect it, they take charge. I've tried everything, and nothing helps. I'm at the end of my rope. Is there no one who can do anything for me? Isn't that the real question? The answer, thank God, is that Jesus Christ can and does. He acted to set things right in this life of contradictions, where I want to serve God with all my heart and mind, but I'm pulled by the influence of sin to do something totally different. I get so much strength out of that because this is the kind of love that Triple X Church was showing. This is the kind of Jesus that they were introducing me to. This is what got inside of my head. This is love in action. That was Jesus in skin that they were doing. When I was sitting in Playboy's offices, right at the end of my career, they offered me $4,000 a day to produce a new lesbian series for them. Now, this is on top of what I'm already doing. And Playboy, by the way, has some of the most hardcore sites on the internet. They're not just a softcore magazine. So they offered me this offer. And I'd been praying a little bit as Triple X Church got inside of my head. And I was praying as I left their office, and I listened to this one. This one was great. This is for the record books here. God, it doesn't seem like I can do anything that... let me start it over. I was saying, God, it doesn't seem to matter what I do, you want to bless me. I just was given a new porn contract, and I'm thanking God for it. That was a recipe for some sort of reaction. And I'm telling you, this next part sounds a little bit crazy, but this is what happened. Right after I said that, this electric shock went through my body and knocked my breath out. I was like, "Good." Whoa. Pulled over to the side of the road with my hand shaking. And my best friend, who's still an agnostic to this day, John that I mentioned, he thinks it was a short in my car. But it wasn't. I was sitting on leather seats. I had a leather steering wheel. It was a brand new car. I knew what it was. And it wasn't God who was punishing me. He was saying, I just have so much more for you than this. This is so petty. This is so petty. Put up the photo of my wife and my little boy. This is who I sold out for $500,000 a year. So petty. I've shared with you how fake porn is. What are you selling out for? Is it porn? Even less? We don't have a happy ending yet. We're great friends. We're not remarried. I do wear a ring, kind of as a symbol that I'm ready to honor the vows I didn't take seriously before. But that's what I sold out for $500,000 a year. And the decision to do whatever it was that I wanted to do. I hope you're not selling out today. But if you are, there is hope. See, when I called up Triple X Church after that shock, I said to him, I told Craig the story. I says, Craig, 2 weeks ago, here's what happened to me. I tried to make a bargain with God. I told him that if he would answer all my questions and he'd do things my way on my terms, I'd surrender my life to him. But I didn't hear from him. These last 2 weeks have been horrible. Belinda thinks I'm crazy because I can't pick up a camera. But I can't surrender my life to God yet. I said, but finally today, I was driving down Interstate 5, and it hit me that God probably just wants me to give him my life and trust him. And so that's what I did. And he was celebrating with me. He was like, that's absolutely amazing. He's like, I'm at a conference. I can't get away, but I'm sending JR, one of their staff pastors, out. Flew JR out from Grand Rapids, Michigan to Northern California to spend time helping strengthen me. Didn't charge me anything. They're just being Jesus in skin again. They're just living their faith. And And I was telling JR, I was like, JR, I'm so scared. I know I'm going to lose everything. I haven't been saving money. That's okay. I don't mind losing all the stuff, and the girlfriend. All that did go away too. She didn't stay much longer after that. After 6 years together, I says that's not the part that really concerns me. What really concerns me is that Wendy and Caden, I've been their sole support all this time. It was hard to talk Wendy into taking money from me, but this is what I'm doing now. How am I going to support this? And they took care of it for me until I launched a new business. Be in Jesus and Skin yet again. Some Christian donors that they told about the problem, these Christians that I'd always despised, were supporting my son and my ex-wife as I started to rebuild my life. And later I says, Craig, I would like to go to seminary. I'd like that education. I think that would be so beneficial to me. So that's what I'm planning on doing. He says, okay, we'll pay for it. This is an amazing ministry, people. They do awesome things nowadays in Las Vegas. Like this one crazy thing they just recently did. They thought, hey, this love thing seems to be working. God says that His love will change lives, and we're trusting it. Let's try it again in another aspect. So they went into this brothel, not to the part where they work, but the girls, when they're off duty, stay in some pretty nasty conditions. They totally rebuilt it. They painted the walls. They wrote loved on it. They embroidered loved in their pillowcases. They told them that we're here for you if you ever want out of this. We'll help you. We've done it before. We can help you. It's an absolutely amazing thing what God's love does when we act it out. But guess what? We've got to act it out. That's what He's called us to do. And there's nothing that we could ever do that would make Him love us any less. There's nothing that He can't use for good. Sometimes we give in to this lie of shame and think, now I've done so many bad things. Guys, I've done some bad things. I doubt if any of you done worse. But He can use all things for good. There's 3 ways, if you're dealing with something, that are absolutely effective for me I want to share with you. Number 1 is to tell God. Be explicit. He tells us, He already knows everything. So this is not for our benefit. And what I mean by explicit is this. A few weeks ago I was having a mind struggle. I received a text message from a former model that I had formed a connection with, and my mind was racing. And I liked it. They were appealing thoughts. They were good memories to my physical man. And so I sat God down in a chair, like He's my psychologist, and I sat across from it. And I started telling Him in detail, here's what I'm feeling, God. Here's who it is. Here's what I want to do to her. I don't even want to stop thinking like this, but I know I should. So I'm asking you for help. And He sheds light on the situation, and it takes away the power of that compulsion. It's absolutely amazing how it works, isn't it? And then the second step is to tell somebody else. That's biblical too. We're supposed to bear each other's burdens. Get involved in a small group. Find some accountability partners that you can just share with without having them assassinate your character. Without having them to put you out of your job in the church because you're finally owning up to some sin that's been holding you back from all that you're capable of doing. That's not the point. Tell God, you tell somebody else. And the last step is you just decide to turn away. Tell God, tell someone else, turn away. What do I mean by that? When those thoughts were in my mind that were so appealing, I had to make a choice. I could either go on thinking them, or I could turn away from them and bring them to God and go back through steps 1 and 2. I had to man up to that. I had to call someone and tell them the details of that. Because I can't stand up here in front of you and tell you that this works without doing it myself. I'm telling you it works. Tell God, tell someone else, turn away, and just keep in your mind that there's nothing that you could ever do that would change the fact that He loves you.